Okay, so we got some news for you from the Six Nations and from the nations that make up the Six Nations as well. Just a kind of a general one before we get into each of the countries. So there has been a lot of news about the World Rugby proposal to bring in a tackle at basically at belly height for community games. So some nations are going to have trials. I think South Africa are one of them. Wales are looking at it as well. I'm not sure about other nations. I'm sure we'll find out more as the weeks progress. But it looks like that's probably what we're going to see at community level. There probably will be some controversy about it. From people who are more quote unquote traditionalists in terms of the rugby, but I think it's actually a step in a good direction. But we'll keep an eye on it and see where that's going to go. Let's get into our Six Nations team by team. Then starting with England. So obviously it was a tough day for England last Saturday. Record home defeat for them. In that game against France. I think it was the third worst defeat of all time as well. It was obviously also France's record win against England. A lot of soul searching going on with England after that. In terms of their players, then Chesham, he's out with an ankle injury and is going to miss the game against Ireland. I felt they actually had a decent Six Nations. Obviously, no one really in the England team had a good game against France, but overall, I think it was fairly good. For the other three games that he played, Ollie Lawrence is also ruled out with a hamstring injury, and potentially Tuilagi might come into the centres, maybe to replace him. For the game against Ireland, because he's back from suspension after that, like the crazy sending off that he got, where he pretty much like attacked a player, like when he was carrying target him. But yeah, he could be back for England. He's actually never lost against Ireland as well. So obviously, as an Irish fan, I'm hoping that doesn't record is one that does go. At the weekend, it doesn't continue. Also, Marcus Smith has been talking about how the English team are relishing what he calls a free swing against Ireland. So there will be pressure on them to produce a performance, but he feels that it'll be a big test of the squad's resolve and togetherness, and the fact that maybe they're playing against Ireland, nobody expects them to get a result. They can maybe just go out and produce a performance and maybe produce a bit of a shock there as well. He didn't have a great game against France, but it was the forwards really were the problem, right? It's not really much he could do there. The only thing that really improved when Farrell came on was the leadership in the team, and I think that's more on Ellis Genge than on Marcus Smith, because Farrell come on and maybe brought a little bit of order to the England team, but I don't think playing in terms of playing a 10 that he would have kind of changed the result if the pack had gotten beaten up as much as that when Smith was on as well. So yeah, I think though I've said before, like the debate about Smith, Farrell, Ford is going to rage for a long time. Something kind of as an outsider, I kind of find it. I find it difficult to understand like the English mentality when it comes to this, and not just these guys, but a lot of the time, like there's always like player has a bad game, and suddenly there's like a raft of players are proposed to be the ones who should replace them. One of those players get a game, they have a good game, everybody says that they are the next whoever, like the best thing ever. Then they have a bad game, and then the cycle continues from there. I don't know. Maybe we just have a smaller pool in Ireland, and maybe I guess personally, I'm not that much into the whole kind of antagonistic rivalry. I'm more into kind of friendly rivalry, as in like, I'm a Leinster fan, but I will cheer for Munster, Ulster, and Connacht as long as they're not playing Leinster. Like, I'm not one of these fans that wants Leinster to do well and the other Irish provinces to do badly, so you can rub it in their faces. So maybe it's just I don't have that perspective on the game, possibly. More though on the England team. So Matt Proudfoot, who was an assistant at England, he said that England are feeling the absence of the likes of Luke Cowan-Dickie, Tom Curry, Courtney Laws, and Joe Launchbury. Obviously, players who would have brought some more physicality to the England pack. But the thing is, you're trying to develop a team, and some of those players, I'm not sure. Like the likes of Joe Launchbury, I don't think you're really going to see much of him back in an England shirt. Courtney Laws looks like he is coming back. He might be in at 6 maybe soon for them. But then, the thing is, you got to look at the team that's there as well, and the players coming through. Like there are some decent players coming through. The likes of Chesham was, as I said, was decent. I think Willis was decent as well. Dombrant is obviously getting stick now after being the guy that everybody wanted to see. And now, like, if let's say someone like Simmons come in, he'd probably get the same stick after a while as well. So it's kind of hard to with that England squad. I think, like, something I've said in the past with England is that they have so many players who in the Premiership can look like world beaters, but then when they come to test level, because they all look like they're amazing, it's very hard to compare then how the player would go at test level until you give them a shot. But you can't constantly cycle through players all the time. You've got to, at some point, settle on a team and let them develop as a team at test level. Like, players need time for that. But let's get on with some more news. So Clive Woodward, he said, his quote, "The result merely shows that the Eddie Jones regime led England rugby into big trouble in the last 3 years, with a few one-off wins papering over the cracks." Now, Woodward is not Eddie Jones' biggest fan. He also blamed them for the loss against Scotland as well. But he surprisingly didn't credit him with the wins over Wales or Italy. Apparently that was all Borthwick for those ones. And I was wondering, like, what if England win the Rugby World Cup? Is that then down to Eddie Jones too? Or does Clive only see, like, the bad in Eddie on that? Like, I know that Borthwick is new in the job and it's going to take time for him to sort things out, but still, he's the coach who picked the squad for this Six Nations. He could have picked whoever he wanted. He's the one putting the game plans together, running training with the players, coming up with the match tactics and stuff like that. So, some of the blame definitely is on Borthwick, but in terms of, like, I do believe he needs time. Every new coach needs time. I don't like the whole knee-jerk thing that is coming into rugby now. With more money, seems to be more pressure on coaches, and coaches, getting sacked much earlier. And I don't like that trend, but I think it's going to continue. But yeah, I think Borthwick needs time, and I don't necessarily see the need to put the boot into Eddie Jones afterwards. He's already causing enough trouble down in Australia already. So then just the last thing on England. So obviously they're going to Dublin to face Ireland, who are chasing the Grand Slam on Paddy's weekend. So they're going to look to be party poopers over there. And as an Ireland fan, again, hope that doesn't happen. Right, on to France then. The other side of it there, record victory over England. They broke their Twickenham hoodoo as well in spectacular fashion. Amazing performance for them. Paul Willemse, though, he's out of the Wales game with hamstring injury, and he's returned to Montpellier. And then also this week, just some people speaking about how crazy good Dupont is. Alex King, who's one of Gatlin's assistants, Wales, has likened Dupont to Dan Carter in terms of the influence he has on the game. And I can see why he does have that kind of aura about him and an ability to just spark his team. And just, I think like people used to talk in the past about, for Ireland, what if Sexton goes down? What do Ireland do then? Who comes on? But I think now it's like, what if Dupont goes down? Like, Dupont, like they replaced him for the last few minutes of that game against England. Otherwise, he played every single minute of the Six Nations. And you're wondering, like, who goes in at 9 if they don't have Dupont? Like, Dupont has, hopefully not now, because you want to see all the players at the World Cup. So hopefully the likes of Chesham and Lawrence recover for then. They should. It seemed like short-term injuries they had. But what if Dupont was out of the World Cup? Who goes in at 9 then? I think he's probably, in terms of World Rugby, not only the most irreplaceable because he's just so fantastic, and there isn't another player up to his level at 9, I don't think, in the world. No matter how many quality 9s are running around, Dupont is definitely a step above all the rest. But other than that, in terms of just the French team and being able to play at 9 for France and have that experience with that team, there's nobody in France at the moment who can just step in there and do a job. Not talking about doing like what Dupont does, but just being able to play there at 9 and deliver on the coach's plan, because Dupont is the only one who does it. So that would be, if I was a French fan, that would be my nightmare scenario, would be Dupont getting injured. But also Matt Dawson has likened him to the Terminator as well this week. So plenty of compliments going out there for Anton. But yeah, what a fantastic player. On to next, Ireland. So Gary Ringrose will miss the game against England. Looked like a very bad head knock he took there. Basically his head into Blair Kinghorn's hip. And probably concussion. They said that after the game he was up and talking, and he seems okay, and he was took part in some of the meetings as well this week. Obviously will not be involved against England. Also Ian Henderson is out with a broken forearm, so obviously he misses the England game too. Again, wishing the both speedy recoveries. And any injured players out there who have any chance to possibly make the Rugby World Cup. Hopefully they're all back and playing well and are able to get through the World Cup, and injuries don't deny us seeing any of those fantastic players there. Also, some less serious injuries, like the likes of Sheehan and Kelleher both had shoulder injuries. Kelleher seems to be a recurrence of what he had when he was out for a while, which is basically just a lack of power in his arm. He was basically playing with one arm. That's why, even though he was on the pitch, Van der Fleer was throwing in against Scotland. Then Doris as well with his hip. They're all being monitored this week, so they may be involved against England, but I don't think we should expect all of them to be involved. Leinster called up some players, so we got the likes of Ross Maloney at lock has been called into the squad, and also Ulster hooker Tom Stewart. That's Tom Stewart, who I think is the top try scorer in the URC. So what's the bet? Him like getting on the bench, coming on, scoring a try from the back of a maul to win the Grand Slam. That would be some story for him. Also, Van der Fleer shouldn't have to throw into the lineouts this week, but we'll see. Mac Hansen, then, he's just been talking about that there's a fair bit of hatred towards England, but basically that's all in the past. So just talking about like kind of historic stuff, but also saying like that the English players are good lads and they have a drink with them and stuff after the game. So a little bit tongue in cheek, I think, from him. Andy Farrell then also spoken about the nature of England's loss is going to make Ireland's task harder because there's going to be a reaction expected from England. So they're going to be really fired up for that game. And it's going to be hard for Ireland to deal with them at times. Also, Tyke Furlong has been talking about the whole Grand Slam thing and says that they're going to be playing the game rather than the occasion. So just, focusing on what they need to do. And if they get, if they basically do what they need to do in terms of, performing their roles in the game, then the result should follow, and then the occasion will follow after that as well. And then just on some news on the upcoming women's Six Nations. So it's good to see that Ireland's women's team will now be wearing navy shorts instead of white to address kind of period concerns. And, Ireland, they've gotten a lot wrong with women's rugby over recent years, but it's good to see something positive from them. On to Italy now. Kieran Crowley has been talking about how he's not happy with the officiating. He was asking, like, how can Wales give away 17 penalties, 5 or 6 of them close to their own line, and not get warned once in the game? And was also talking about, he's kind of sick of complaining through the proper channels to World Rugby and then getting a response back saying, "Oh, sorry, we got it wrong." He probably will get some kind of censure from that, I would imagine. But the thing is, like, I don't like to see stuff like this either. And like, we can talk about Razzie Rasmus as well another time. But kind of criticisms of the referees in this such a public way. Again, I think it's something that's coming in with more pressure in the game, means more instances like this are going to happen. I honestly think that we have supposedly a professional rugby professional rugby game now, right? So we need to have like professional referees and assistant referees as well. And what I mean by that is that, like, I think that referees should be paid something close to what some of the players will be on. And so that they are completely professional and we attract the best talent that we can to refereeing. And to pay for that, I think that maybe there should be something in like broadcast contracts or wherever, sponsorships, that has like a portion that goes to a pool that would pay for referees. And let's give them the same kind of support that all the players get to reach the standards that they're reaching, so that if we're going to criticize them, well, let's support them, I think, in the way that players get supported as well. That's kind of my opinion on it. Other people might have other opinions. But next then, Michel Lamoureux, he was asked about, what could Italy do better for the future? And he had a very simple answer: execution. And he's absolutely right. If Italy executed well against Wales, they probably would have scored a couple more tries. But I also think that they need to find a kicking game from somewhere. They need to be able to play in the opposition's half more. And then all the good things they're doing, suddenly, as I said previously, they're leading to tries rather than breaks up to the halfway line. Then some wider news, David Ceci, he signed a contract extension until 2025 with Zebre. He's currently the club captain there and is out injured, so it's good. Some good news for them, and also some more good news. They've also signed Jake Pelledri from Gloucester from next season on, and another Italian signing. Malachi Fekitoa has signed from Benetton from Munster. So we knew for a few months that he was leaving Munster. We just didn't know where he's going. So now we know where he's going. So the centres are looking pretty strong there now at Benetton. We think that he's joining there. He's been in great form for Munster. And then you've got also Brex and Menicello there as well. So that really is, a tasty pool of centres to choose from there. On to Scotland then. Finn Russell with his knee and Stuart Hogg with his ankle. Both out of the Italy game. They both returned to their clubs. Again, wish them a speedy recovery from that. Richie Gray, he's still with the Scotland squad. He did come off early against Ireland. He's being assessed this week to see if he can play or not. Potentially, Blair Kinghorn could start at 10 against Italy. And Ben Healy, who switched allegiance from Ireland, could possibly be involved on the bench as well. You've also got Edinburgh fly half Charlie Savala. He's been called up, and so has Josh Bayliss of Bath. And then Ryan Wilson, he's just been talking about how Scotland they're on the right path despite the loss to Ireland. And he was saying, like, if they could, that first half performance against Ireland, if they could produce that for 80 minutes, then they would be close to the top teams in the world. Then in terms of some Women's Six Nations news, Brian Eason, who's the coach, says that Scotland are targeting their home games. So they have home games against Wales, Ireland and Italy in a bid to end a 9-match losing streak, which includes their pool games in last year's Women's Rugby World Cup. But they have England up first, so you'd imagine that's probably going to be a 10-game losing streak, at least before they break it. Next on to Wales then, Liam Williams with his shoulder and Scott Baldwin with pectoral problem. Both been ruled out of the France game. Kieran Williams has been released back to the Ospreys, and hooker Sam Parry has been called up into the squad. Lee Halfpenny or Lewis Rees-Zammit, they could play 15 against France. It'll be interesting to see who Gatland opts for there. Dan Biggar is also going to be available. He had a back problem that kept him out against Italy, but he's available for selection again. Josh Adams is being monitored with a knee problem. And then just some news on the craziness that's going on in Wales with the WRU and all the things that are flying about. So there's an independent review into the WRU. They're seeking public contributions at the moment. It's led by a former High Court judge, Dame Anne Rafferty. So they'll be collecting kind of submissions, I guess, over the next while. Also, former PRB chair Amanda Blank, she's been talking about how she felt like she wasn't being listened to at all when she was there, and she had to endure a lot of misogynistic comments as well. Wales, they need to do better. They need to modernise. And I think it's not just Wales, because if you look at I think a lot of the unions, the players went professional, but I don't think the organizations ever have. They still don't feel like, they talked about with Wales, that's £100 million business and et cetera, but it from the point of view of the leadership, it doesn't feel like that. And it's not just Wales either. They're the ones in trouble at the moment. But like, look at in England with the clubs going bust and the leadership from the RFU, and then their talk about reducing tackles to like basically leg tackles only, and the pushback they got against that. And then like, look, even at Ireland, how badly we handled like our women's game, and the fact that like 50 odd like current and ex internationals had to come out like and sign a letter to get something done at all. And then some of those players are being like ostracized now and not being picked for the Six Nations because they spoke out. And then like look at how badly we handled our sevens. The fact that the sevens are doing well now is good, but you can't paper over the fact that they got it wrong initially. And then like, over-reliance on private schools in Dublin as well is something that may come back and bite us in the ass in the future. But yeah, every union I feel needs to modernize and soon as well, because the game is ready to grow, but I don't feel like the people who are in charge of it are the people that should be handling that phase of growth. I don't think they are professional enough in terms of what's going to happen over the next period. Also, just in terms of growth as well. So Alex Donaldson, so she's an ex Welsh international. She's been talking about how the women's game offers the most potential for growth, and I think she's absolutely right about that. Just look at England now. They're playing their home games at Twickenham. Who would have saw that like 10 years ago? And that's what's coming down the line for every single other union as well. That Ireland are going to be playing at the Aviva in I don't know how many years' time, but and then Wales at the Principality, etc. And that's where the women's game is going, and the organisations I think are way behind on that. But she talked about how girls have to go to England to play their professional rugby because there's no Welsh league that can compete with those with those English clubs. And my question is, like, when are we going to see a women's URC? Like, they already have the Premiership 15s in England, who are obviously a step ahead. You can see their national team is several steps ahead, especially like the Celtic nations. And yeah, like for me, it's the next step. I think is a women's URC. Like, it's an investment in the future of the game. It's gonna have a slow start, but like the URC, which was formerly the Celtic League, had a slow start as well, and now it's beginning to really pick up momentum. I think it's definitely like close to the top 14 in that battle for the best Northern Hemisphere club competition, excluding obviously the likes of the Heineken Cup. But yeah, that's where the women's side of the game could go as well. So I'm all behind, like, let's get a women's URC off the ground. And then what you're going to have is, like, here in Ireland, the likes of the RDS, Kingspan, the Sports Ground, and then either like Thomond Park as well, all potentially being full or close to capacity on the weeks when the men's team are playing away, because you have the women's team playing at home. And who wouldn't want to potentially close to double the revenue just by investing in the game now? For me, it's a no-brainer, but we'll see on that. Okay, but that's it for today. I'm going to have previews for the weekend. So there will be like last round, there will be a preview that kind of talks about generally about each of the matchups and the current situation and permutations at the games and stuff like that. And then we'll also have a preview for each of the games that looks at more in depth into the teams and some caps and experience and news associated with them as well. Also, I will have some more select 15s based on the stats from the Six Nations. There's probably going to be one more this week, and also, if you're interested, like we've obviously got the last weekend of the Six Nations this week as well, but we also have the last weekend of the European Rugby Championship, which is a level below. So you've got Georgia are playing Portugal in the final, and then it's Romania versus Spain in like the losers final, as it were, for third place as well. And then there are also some other games, including like I think who's it? Netherlands, Germany, Poland, and I think Belgium are the other team. But they're playing like lower, kind of all deciding like first to 8 basically, the positions. So I'll have reviews of those games as well next week, so I'm going to cover that. I did watch some of those games, but we'll have more of that for you next week. So hopefully see you on another video.